Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening whenever you happen to be catching this. This is the start of the 2026 Channel CropCast April 9th edition, and I am Tyler Brugdenhill, technical agronomist in South Central Nebraska, bringing this to you. If this is your first time watching these, I would say welcome. If you're returning from last year, glad to have you back. So, before we jump into stuff here, this is going to be a weekly agronomy update email sent out by your channel seed pros here in the great state of Nebraska, or maybe beyond that if you're watching somewhere else on YouTube. But just a weekly and timely agronomic update. Try and keep it as brief as we can. But with that being said, let's jump into it. So for the state of Nebraska here, we're looking at the bare soil temperature statewide and a little bit more elevated than I expected to find here this morning running this data. We are flirting with 50 in a lot of these sensors across the state. As we get into the north, maybe more in the mid to upper 40s, but here in South Central, there's several of these kicking on right at 50 degrees. The important thing to notice or note about this is when we're thinking about corn and soybeans and optimum soy planting conditions, we really want that to not be a pass-fail test of, hey, once it hits 50, we're good to go, green light. We really want that to be, hey, hit 50 degrees for a bare soil temp and climbing from there. So if we have things like residue, if we have temperature variations, which it looks like for the next week here, we're probably above what I would consider average for the state of Nebraska, at least in the south central part of the state. But those are really big considerations to be thinking about before we go dropping some seed in the ground. Which really brings us to our next point on, considerations to make on corn and planting into cold soils. We really want that to have a 50-degree soil temp and climbing to be able to germinate. This is a crop that is going to take anywhere from 90 to 120 GDUs of heat to get out of the ground in perfect conditions. If we plant into cooler, you're opening that opportunity. It may not come up for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even longer, but the reality is you're also opening that plant up to more potential for things like disease, insect damage, and things like crusting, those types of things. So paying attention to temperature and future forecast at this time of year, I don't probably have to tell anybody listening to this, but that becomes really, really critical, especially when we're in planting conditions like today where we're moisture stressed. So keep praying for those rains, obviously, not only to help out the fire situation, but also to get us some relief as we really turn the page over to planting here in the next couple of weeks, really, really heavily. The big thing is the cold soil piece is really going to lead to large variations. So as we all know, we want that crop to get emerged as evenly and as quickly as possible once we do put it in the ground. Cold soils simply make that process a more sporadic uh, overall experience for the seed. So then we get things like the picture that we're showing here with imbibitional chilling, or we get those uneven stands. So it's really good to think about, hey, what are we putting this crop into? In a lot of cases, uh, this is going to be the most important pass that we make over this field, so we've got to do it right. The other side of that is if it's a product that you are really excited about, maybe it was a new product last year that you're trying for the first time. The other reality is maybe you wouldn't have the opportunity to replant that product if something were to happen to your initial stance. So getting it done right the first time becomes really, really critical when it gets to this stage. Equipment path prep, I mean, again, a most important pass of the year. When we think about uneven plant emergence and spacing in corn, you could be talking anywhere to 7 to 15 bushels loss right out the get go. And the uneven stand piece, again, it really inhibits that plant's ability to compensate for space, and that's what the decreased yields are going to be. So imagine you're right next to your neighbor that might be 2 to 3 growth stages ahead, building a more robust root system. He's going to be better suited to go after things like water and nutrition and probably end up robbing a lot from you. And you're kind of starting out of the blocks right from the get go in a behind type fashion. So Keeping that planter well maintained, making sure we've got uh, really solid disc openers. We've got the closing wheel set. We've got our depth set right where we needed it to be. Um, good seed to soil contact. Preparation has been starting the last 2 to 3 weeks, as you guys know. So that's where this gets really, really critical. And again, we never want to just assume something is ready. Uh, Make sure we're checking those equipment pieces several different times, making the necessary modifications if we need to. The other thing I wanted to talk about is just warrant herbicide as a whole. This is a really effective piece, especially in Nebraska, when we think about number of registered crops being corn, soybeans, forage, and grain sorghum. So we're really targeting those pigweed species and several grass species that you can see on the screen there. Acetochlor in a capsule suspension, it does a really nice job from a crop safety standpoint, and it also gives us a really wide application window in corn and soybeans. You can see the number of tank mix partners there, anything from Diflex to Balance Flex to Lotus. So it gives us a really nice application window to be able to utilize this. So if you haven't thought about that, you still have some residual thoughts on mind of what you're going to use for a product, I'd ask who you're working with a little bit about warrant. So as always, really appreciate your guys' time here today. If you have any questions, my contact info is in this last slide, but just want to say thank you, be safe, and make every acre count.